The sun was shining brightly on a crisp Saturday morning, and the air buzzed with excitement. Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her dressing room, adjusting the delicate lace veil that framed her face. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she took one last look at herself in the full-length mirror. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the day she would marry Michael, the man she loved deeply. Outside, the venue looked like something out of a fairy tale. A sprawling garden filled with blooming flowers stretched across acres of lush greenery. Rows of white chairs were arranged neatly under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights. At the end of the aisle stood an elegant arch decorated with roses and ivy. Everything had been planned meticulously by Sarah and Michael over the past year. Every detail, from the playlist for the first dance to the flavor of the wedding cake, had been chosen with care. Friends and family began arriving early, dressed in their finest outfits. Laughter echoed through the grounds as people greeted each other warmly. Children ran around playing tag while older guests reminisced about how quickly time seemed to pass. It felt like everyone could sense the magic of the occasion. Even the weather seemed to cooperate perfectly. There wasn't a cloud in sight, and a gentle breeze kept the heat at bay. As Sarah stepped into the bridal car, clutching her bouquet tightly, her heart raced with anticipation. She thought about all the moments leading up to this day, their first date, the moment Michael got down on one knee to propose, and the countless hours they spent planning their future together. Nothing could dampen her spirits today, or so she believed. At the venue, Michael waited nervously near the altar. Dressed in a sharp black suit, he fidgeted with his tie as he scanned the crowd. His best man patted him reassuringly on the back, whispering words of encouragement, but something didn't feel right. Michael's mind kept drifting to Emily, his ex-girlfriend who had recently come back into his life after years of silence. They hadn't meant to reconnect. It started innocently enough, with coffee catch-ups and nostalgic conversations, but lately, those meetings had become more frequent and complicated. When the music finally began to play, signaling Sarah's entrance, the entire venue turned to watch. Gasps of admiration filled the air as Sarah appeared, walking slowly down the aisle on her father's arm. Her gown shimmered in the sunlight, and her smile lit up the space like nothing else ever could. Everyone rose to their feet, clapping softly as she approached Michael. But then, something strange happened. As Sarah drew closer, Michael froze. He stared at her, but it was as if he wasn't seeing her anymore. Instead, his thoughts were consumed by memories of Emily, the way she used to laugh, the way her hair smelled after rain, the promises they once made to each other. Panic gripped him, tightening his chest until he couldn't breathe. Before anyone realized what was happening, Michael muttered a single word under his breath: Emily. Then, without another glance at Sarah, he turned and bolted down the aisle. The stunned silence that followed was deafening. Guests exchanged bewildered looks, unsure whether to chase after him or comfort Sarah, who now stood frozen in shock. Sarah's father gently guided her to a nearby chair where she collapsed, tears streaming down her face. The dream she had nurtured for so long had shattered in an instant. Whispers spread like wildfire among the guests. What had just happened? Why would Michael abandon Sarah at their own wedding? No one noticed the figure lingering near the entrance, a woman with wide eyes and trembling hands. Emily had arrived late, intending to wish the couple well from afar, but instead, she witnessed the unraveling of everything Sarah had hoped for. Little did anyone know, her presence here today would soon become central to understanding the chaos that unfolded next. What no one expected, however, was how Sarah would respond, not with despair, but with strength. And even less predictable was the role Jake, Sarah's childhood friend, would play in helping her pick up the pieces of her broken dreams. But that chapter of the story was yet to unfold. For now, all anyone could do was try to make sense of the unthinkable scene that had just played out before their very eyes. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or want me to proceed with expanding another part. As the chaos of the abandoned wedding settled, whispers about Emily filled the air. Guests exchanged puzzled glances, trying to piece together why Michael would leave Sarah at the altar for someone else. But to truly understand what had driven him to such a drastic decision, one had to go back in time, to the beginning of Michael and Emily's story. Michael and Emily had met during their freshman year of college. She was outgoing and adventurous, always ready to try something new. He was quieter, more reserved, but with a deep sense of loyalty that drew people to him. Their friendship blossomed into romance quickly. fueled by late-night study sessions, shared jokes, and dreams of traveling the world together. They were inseparable, or so it seemed. For 4 years, they built a life side by side. Emily talked endlessly about her plans after graduation, how she wanted to move abroad, explore different cultures, and find herself before settling down. Michael listened patiently, supporting her ambitions even though he secretly hoped she'd change her mind. Deep down, he imagined them growing old together, raising a family, and building a future rooted in stability. Or so he thought. What no one knew, not even Sarah, was that Emily had re-entered Michael's life months ago. After years of living overseas, she returned to town for a temporary assignment. By sheer coincidence, they ran into each other at a local cafe. At first, it was awkward. Both avoided talking about the past, sticking to safe topics like work and mutual friends. But as weeks passed, their meetings grew more frequent. Emily claimed she only wanted closure. "I need to know if we can still be friends," she told him once over coffee. Michael, still carrying a torch for her, agreed. Each encounter awakened old feelings he thought he buried. Memories of their college days resurfaced. How they used to laugh uncontrollably at inside jokes, how Emily's presence made every moment brighter. At first, Michael tried to justify these feelings. He told himself it was harmless nostalgia, nothing more. He continued planning his wedding with Sarah, convincing himself that what he felt for Emily was just leftover affection from their shared history. But the line between nostalgia and longing blurred faster than he realized. One evening, after another meeting with Emily, Michael found himself staring at photos of their younger selves. His heart ached with regret. What if he had fought harder to keep her? What if letting her go had been the biggest mistake of his life? These questions consumed him, gnawing away at the foundation of his relationship with Sarah. Unbeknownst to Sarah, Michael began pulling away emotionally. He canceled date nights, claiming work kept him busy. When Sarah asked if something was wrong, he brushed it off, saying he was just stressed. In truth, he couldn't bring himself to admit the turmoil brewing inside him. Every time he looked at Sarah, guilt weighed heavily on his shoulders. Yet every time he saw Emily, doubt crept in, making him question whether he was truly ready to marry someone else. The turning point came just days before the wedding. Emily invited Michael to dinner under the pretense of catching up one last time before leaving town again. Over wine and candlelight, she opened up about her struggles over the years, the loneliness she felt while traveling, the realization that chasing adventure hadn't brought her the fulfillment she expected. "I've missed you, Michael," she admitted softly, her voice trembling. "More than I ever let myself admit." Her words hit him like a tidal wave. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a life where Emily never left. Could they start over? Did he owe it to himself, and to her, to find out? By the time the wedding day arrived, Michael's mind was a battlefield. Standing at the altar, watching Sarah walk toward him, he felt torn between two worlds. On one side was the promise of a stable future with Sarah. On the other was the haunting allure of what might have been with Emily. And then, in a split second, his heart made the choice for him. No one understood why Michael ran, not Sarah, not the guests, not even Emily herself. All they knew was that his actions left behind a trail of pain and unanswered questions. But deep down, Michael knew the truth. He had let fear and indecision cloud his judgment. And now, there was no going back. Little did he realize, however, that Emily's return wouldn't bring the answers he desperately sought. Instead, it would unravel everything he thought he knew about love, commitment, and the choices we make when faced with our deepest fears. Let me know if you'd like any changes or want me to continue with the next part. The moment Michael bolted from the altar, Sarah felt as though the ground beneath her had crumbled. She stood frozen in place, clutching her bouquet tightly, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Guests gasped and murmured around her, but their voices seemed distant, muffled by the pounding in her ears. Her father gently guided her to a nearby chair, his face etched with concern. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as she tried, and failed, to hold herself together. For a few minutes, Sarah sat alone in silence, her thoughts racing. How could this happen? She replayed every conversation, every memory she shared with Michael, searching for signs that something was wrong. Hadn't he promised to love her forever? Hadn't they built a future together, brick by brick? The betrayal cut deeper than any words could describe. It wasn't just the embarrassment of being left at the altar. It was the realization that the man she trusted completely had walked away without a second thought. As the initial shock began to fade, anger bubbled up inside her. Who did Michael think he was? Did he not care about all the effort she poured into making this day perfect? Did he not consider how his actions would devastate her and humiliate her in front of everyone who mattered most? The unfairness of it all burned within her like a flame. But then, amidst the storm of emotions, a small voice whispered in her mind. Asterisk. This is not your fault, asterisk. Slowly, Sarah wiped her tears and took a deep breath. She realized that no matter how much pain Michael caused, she couldn't let him ruin her entire day or her spirit. This was supposed to be her celebration, and she refused to let his selfishness take that away from her. Determined to reclaim some control over the situation, Sarah called her maid of honor, Lisa, into the private room where she had been hiding. "We're going to keep going," Sarah said firmly, her voice steadier than she expected. "The party isn't cancelled. We're going to eat, dance, and celebrate without him." Lisa hesitated, unsure if Sarah was truly ready to face everyone after such a public humiliation. But when she saw the resolve in Sarah's eyes, she nodded and quickly spread the word among the guests. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted. Friends and family rallied around Sarah, offering hugs, kind words, and encouragement. Someone even joked, "Well, at least we still get cake," which drew nervous laughter from the crowd. When Sarah stepped back outside, the sight of her walking tall and composed stunned everyone. Gone was the broken bride. In her place stood a woman determined to rise above the chaos. As she addressed the crowd, her voice trembled slightly but carried strength. "I know today didn't go as planned," she began, pausing to collect herself. "And I won't lie, this has been one of the hardest moments of my life. But I refuse to let anyone take away my joy. So, let's eat, drink, and celebrate. Not because of what was supposed to happen, but because of who we are together. Thank you all for being here." Her speech earned thunderous applause, and soon, the music started playing again. People cheered as Sarah joined the festivities, laughing and dancing despite everything. For the first time since Michael ran, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this disaster wouldn't define her after all. Later that evening, as Sarah mingled with her guests, she noticed someone unexpected arriving late: Jake, her childhood friend. Jake had always been there for her through thick and thin, though their paths had diverged slightly after college. He had planned to attend the wedding but got delayed due to car trouble. When he finally arrived, he immediately sensed something was off. "Sarah?" Jake asked softly, approaching her with concern. "What happened?" She hesitated for a moment, then decided to tell him the truth. As she recounted the events of the day, Jake listened intently, his expression growing darker with each word. When she finished, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You deserve so much better than this," Jake said firmly. "Don't ever forget that." His words struck a chord deep within Sarah. In that moment, surrounded by friends and loved ones, she realized she wasn't alone. Whatever lay ahead, she knew she had people who cared about her, and perhaps, new beginnings waiting to unfold. "Let me know if you'd like adjustments or want me to move on to the next part." As the evening wore on, Sarah found herself leaning heavily on Jake's presence. His arrival had been unexpected but oddly comforting. While others offered sympathy and kind words, Jake brought something different, a quiet strength that reminded her of simpler times. They had grown up together, sharing countless memories as kids, riding bikes around the neighborhood, staying up late during sleepovers, and supporting each other through teenage heartbreaks. But over the years, life had pulled them in separate directions, leaving their friendship to fade into occasional messages and holiday greetings. Now, standing beside her at what was supposed to be her wedding, Jake seemed more like a lifeline than just an old friend. He didn't push her to talk or pretend everything was okay. Instead, he simply stayed by her side, offering small gestures of support. When Sarah looked overwhelmed, he handed her a glass of water. When she needed space, he gave her room but kept a watchful eye from afar. And when she finally allowed herself to laugh again, even if it was at someone's awkward attempt at cheering her up, Jake laughed along with her. At one point, they slipped away from the crowd and sat together under a tree near the garden's edge. The soft glow of fairy lights illuminated their faces as they talked quietly. Jake listened intently as Sarah poured out her feelings, her confusion, her anger, and her lingering sadness. She admitted how much faith she had put into Michael, only to feel betrayed in the worst way possible. You know, Jake said gently after a pause, it says more about him than it does about you. A person who leaves like that, he doesn't deserve someone as amazing as you. Sarah smiled faintly, touched by his words. I guess I should thank him, she joked half-heartedly. If nothing else, I learned that I don't need someone who can't commit. Not today, not ever. Jake nodded, though his expression turned thoughtful. After a moment, he spoke again. Do you remember when we were kids and used to climb that big oak tree behind your house? Sarah chuckled softly. How could I forget? You always made me go first, saying it was ladies first, but secretly, I think you were scared. Hey, Jake protested with mock indignation. I was being chivalrous. Someone had to make sure you didn't fall. Their laughter echoed in the cool night air, bringing back a flood of warm memories. For a brief moment, Sarah forgot about the chaos of the day. It felt good to reminisce, to focus on happier times rather than dwell on the pain Michael had caused. As the conversation continued, Jake subtly shifted its tone. You've always been stronger than anyone gives you credit for, he said earnestly. Even back then, when things got tough, you never backed down. This is no different. You'll get through this, Sarah, and when you do, you'll realize how much better off you are without him. His words struck a chord deep within her. Over the years, Jake had always seen her in a way few others did, as resilient, capable, and worthy of love. His unwavering belief in her began to chip away at the self-doubt Michael's actions had planted. By the end of the evening, Sarah noticed a change in herself. The weight of humiliation still lingered, but it felt lighter somehow. Talking to Jake had reminded her of her own worth, and that maybe, just maybe, there was room in her life for people who truly valued her. As the party began winding down, Jake walked Sarah to her car. Before she got in, he hesitated for a moment, then said, If you ever need anything, or anyone, you know where to find me. I'm here for you, Sarah. Always have been. His sincerity caught her off guard, and for the first time that day, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end of her story, it was the beginning of a new chapter. One where she could rediscover herself, surrounded by those who genuinely cared. Little did either of them know, this moment would mark the start of something neither expected. While Sarah focused on healing, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his role in her life might be changing. And somewhere in the distance, Michael's desperate attempts to fix his mistakes would only drive the two of them closer together. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments or want me to continue with the next part. After leaving Sarah at the altar, Michael didn't stop running until he reached Emily's apartment. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, guilt, panic, and a desperate hope that Emily would somehow make everything okay. He pounded on her door, his heart racing as he waited for her to answer. When she finally opened it, her eyes widened in shock. What are you doing here? Emily asked, stepping back to let him inside. Her voice was calm but laced with confusion. She had no idea what had just transpired at the wedding venue, or so Michael assumed. I left her, Michael blurted out, pacing back and forth in her living room. I couldn't go through with it, Em. I realized I still love you. Emily froze, staring at him as if he'd spoken in another language. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by Michael's heavy breathing. Then, slowly, Emily shook her head. You did what asterisk? She asked, her tone sharp and incredulous. Michael, this isn't some romantic movie where we pick up where we left off. You are about to marry someone else. But I couldn't do it, Michael insisted, his voice rising. Not when I knew I still have feelings for you. Don't you feel the same way? Isn't that why you came back into my life? Emily sighed deeply, rubbing her temples as though trying to ward off an impending headache. No, Michael, that's not why I came back. I told you. I wanted closure. I thought we could be friends again, nothing more. What you're saying, it's insane. Her words hit him like a slap across the face. He had convinced himself that Emily returning to town was fate, that their reconnection meant they were destined to be together again. But now, standing in her apartment, he saw the truth in her eyes. She didn't want him. Not anymore. Closure? Michael repeated bitterly. Is that all I am to you now? After everything we shared, after all those years? It wasn't enough, Michael, Emily interrupted, her voice firm but tinged with sadness. We both know why things ended between us. You weren't ready to chase dreams outside your comfort zone, and I couldn't stay trapped in a life that felt too small. It wasn't fair to either of us to keep dragging it out. The finality of her words crushed him. All this time, he had clung to the fantasy of a second chance with Emily, ignoring the reality that she had moved on long ago. Now, faced with her rejection, he felt more lost than ever. Desperate to salvage something, anything, he tried one last plea. But what about us? Can't we try again? Maybe we can work through it this time. No, Emily said firmly, cutting him off. You made your choice today, Michael. You chose to hurt someone who loves you completely because of feelings you weren't even sure about. That's not the kind of person I want to be involved with. Her words stung, but they'd also ignited a spark of clarity within him. As much as he hated to admit it, she was right. He had acted impulsively, letting fear and nostalgia cloud his judgment. And now, he had ruined not only his relationship with Sarah, but also any chance of reconciling with Emily. Determined to fix his mistakes, Michael returned to the venue later that night. The party was winding down, but a few guests lingered, chatting and laughing despite the earlier drama. When Michael walked in, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Gasps of disbelief rippled through the crowd, followed by angry glares and muttered insults. Ignoring the hostility, Michael scanned the room frantically until he spotted Sarah near the exit, talking to Jake. His stomach churned seeing them together, but he pushed forward anyway. Sarah, he called out, his voice trembling. Please, can we talk? Just for a minute? Sarah turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Jake stepped closer protectively, his body language making it clear he wouldn't tolerate any further harm coming to her. There's nothing to say, Sarah said coldly, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. You made your choice, Michael. Now live with it. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Michael standing alone amidst the wreckage of his own making. As Jake followed Sarah out, Michael collapsed onto a nearby chair, overwhelmed by shame and regret. He had gambled everything, and lost. But little did he know, his actions would set off a chain reaction that neither he nor anyone else could have predicted. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or want me to continue with the next part. Michael's return to the venue was met with icy stares and hushed whispers. Guests who had once considered him a friend now looked at him as though he were a stranger, someone unworthy of trust or compassion. The air felt heavy with judgment, each glance cutting deeper than the last. But Michael didn't care about their opinions. His focus was solely on Sarah. He needed to explain himself, to beg for forgiveness, to somehow undo the damage he had caused. When Sarah finally turned to face him, her expression was unreadable. There was no anger in her eyes, no tears streaming down her cheeks, just a calm, resolute detachment that sent chills down Michael's spine. Standing beside her was Jake, whose presence seemed more protective than ever. It wasn't lost on Michael how close they appeared, how naturally Jake positioned himself between them as if shielding Sarah from further harm. Please, Michael began, his voice cracking under the weight of his desperation. I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand why I did what I did. Sarah crossed her arms over her chest, her posture stiff and unyielding. Why? She asked flatly, her tone devoid of emotion. So you can justify leaving me at the altar? So you can make yourself feel better about ruining my day and my life? No, Michael exclaimed, shaking his head vigorously. That's not what I'm trying to do. I panicked. I thought I still had feelings for Emily, but I was wrong. She doesn't want me, Sarah. She made that clear. I realize now that I acted selfishly, without thinking about how it would hurt you. Sarah let out a bitter laugh, startling both Michael and Jake. You're right. You didn't think. You didn't stop to consider how your actions would affect anyone else. Do you have any idea what it feels like to stand there, waiting for someone who never shows up? To be humiliated in front of everyone you love because the person you trusted completely decided you weren't good enough? Her words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came out. What could he possibly say to defend himself when every accusation she made was true? Jake stepped forward then, his voice firm and commanding. You've said enough, Michael. Whatever you came here to say, it doesn't matter anymore. Sarah doesn't owe you anything, not her time, not her forgiveness, not even an explanation. For a moment, Michael locked eyes with Jake, silently pleading for understanding. But all he saw in Jake's gaze was determination, a fierce loyalty to Sarah that left no room for compromise. Defeated, Michael lowered his head, unable to meet either of their stares. "I'm sorry," he whispered hoarsely, his voice barely audible above the soft hum of distant conversations. "I never meant to hurt you, Sarah. I hope one day you'll believe that." Without another word, Sarah turned and walked away, Jake following closely behind her. They disappeared into the night, leaving Michael standing alone amidst the remnants of a celebration that should have marked the beginning of his new life, but instead marked its unraveling. In the days that followed, Michael tried reaching out to Sarah multiple times. He sent texts, emails, and handwritten letters, begging for just 5 minutes of her time, but every attempt went unanswered. Finally, he showed up at her apartment, hoping to catch her off guard. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, her expression hardened instantly. "This ends now," she said firmly, her voice cold and final. "I don't want to hear your excuses or apologies. You had your chance, Michael. Now leave me alone." With that, she slammed the door in his face, leaving him standing on the doorstep, utterly defeated. As weeks passed, Michael became increasingly isolated. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone who had acted so recklessly. Even his family struggled to reconcile the man they knew with the person who had abandoned Sarah at the altar. Meanwhile, Emily avoided him entirely, refusing to engage in any conversation beyond polite small talk during unavoidable encounters. The loneliness gnawed at him relentlessly. For the first time in his life, Michael understood the true cost of his choices. But while he wallowed in regret, Sarah was moving forward, with Jake by her side. Their bond deepened with each passing day, transforming into something neither of them had anticipated: love. And as Michael watched from afar, powerless to intervene, he realized too late that redemption wasn't something he could demand. It was something he had forfeited the moment he ran away. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or want me to continue with the next part. In the weeks following the disastrous wedding, Sarah threw herself into rebuilding her life. The initial shock of Michael's betrayal had given way to a quiet determination. She refused to let his actions define her or dictate her future. With each passing day, she grew stronger, rediscovering parts of herself she had almost forgotten in the chaos of planning a wedding that never happened. One evening, as they strolled through a park near Sarah's apartment, Jake stopped suddenly and turned to face her. "You know," he began hesitantly, "you've always been incredible, Sarah. Even when we were kids, you were the strongest person I knew. But seeing you handle everything these past few weeks, it's made me realize something." Sarah tilted her head curiously, sensing the weight behind his words. "What is it?" she asked softly. "I think I've been falling for you," Jake admitted, his voice steady despite the nervousness flickering in his eyes. "Not just because of what happened with Michael, but because of who you are. You're smart, kind, resilient, and honestly, I don't know how anyone could ever walk away from someone like you." For a moment, Sarah was speechless. She hadn't expected this confession, though looking back, the signs had been there all along. The way Jake looked at her, the way he lit up when she smiled, it was more than friendship. And now, standing under the soft glow of a street lamp, she realized she felt the same way. "Jake," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "I never thought I'd feel this way again, not after everything that happened. But being around you, it makes me believe in second chances, in asterisk. Relief washed over Jake's face and he smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. Without another word, he took her hand in his, and together, they continued walking, their steps lighter than before. Meanwhile, Michael's world was unraveling. His attempts to reach out to Sarah had failed miserably, leaving him consumed by guilt and regret. Desperate to salvage some part of his old life, he tried contacting Emily again, hoping they might reconnect. But every message went unanswered, every call ignored. One afternoon, he finally mustered the courage to visit her office, determined to confront her once and for all. When Emily saw him waiting outside her building, she sighed deeply, clearly annoyed. "What do you want, Michael?" she asked bluntly, crossing her arms over her chest. "I just need to talk," he pleaded. "Please, I messed up, not just with Sarah, but with us too. I thought coming back into your life meant we could start over, but I realize now that I was wrong. All I'm asking is, can we at least be friends?" Emily studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, shaking her head, she said, "No, Michael, we can't. What you did, to Sarah, to yourself, it's not something I can forgive easily. Maybe someday you'll understand why running away doesn't solve anything. Until then, I think it's best if we stay apart." Her rejection left Michael reeling. He returned home that night feeling emptier than ever, staring at the walls of his apartment as if searching for answers that weren't there. Friends stopped calling, family visits became strained, and even coworkers avoided engaging with him beyond work-related matters. For the first time in his life, Michael truly understood what it meant to lose everything, and everyone you cared about. As months passed, Sarah embraced her new chapter wholeheartedly. She rekindled old hobbies, spent weekends exploring the city with Jake, and leaned on her support system during moments of doubt. Together, she and Jake built a relationship rooted in trust, respect, and mutual admiration. It wasn't perfect. They'd argued occasionally, navigated misunderstandings, but it was real, and for Sarah, that made all the difference. Then one day, while flipping through photos on her phone, Sarah stumbled upon an image of her wedding gown hanging in the dressing room. Instead of sadness, she felt gratitude for surviving, for growing, and for finding love when she least expected it. She sent the photo to Jake with a caption, "From endings come beginnings." Within minutes, he replied, "And from pain comes strength. Here's to us, Sarah." Little did either of them know, their story was far from over. While Sarah and Jake celebrated their newfound happiness, whispers of change rippled through their circle of friends and family. Rumors spread about Michael's downward spiral, fueling speculation about whether he would ever find redemption or if karma had already decided his fate. But for now, Sarah chose to focus on the present. Her heart was full, her spirit unbroken, and her future brighter than she had dared to imagine. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she wouldn't face them alone. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or want me to continue with the final part. Months had passed since the fateful wedding day, and life for Sarah and Jake had transformed in ways neither of them could have predicted. Their bond, once rooted in childhood memories and shared laughter, had blossomed into something deeper, a love built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Friends and family noticed the change in Sarah. She seemed happier, more confident, and at peace with herself. The scars of Michael's betrayal still lingered, but they no longer defined her. Instead, she carried them as reminders of how far she'd come, and how much stronger she was now. "I just want to thank everyone who's been here for me this year," she began, her voice warm and sincere. "It hasn't been easy, but having all of you by my side has made every challenge worth it." She paused, glancing at Jake with a soft smile. "And there's one person I owe more than words can say. Jake, you've been my rock through everything. So tonight, I wanted to share some news." She turned to face him fully, her eyes shining with emotion. Taking a deep breath, she continued, "Jake asked me to marry him last week, and I said yes." The room erupted into cheers and applause as guests rushed forward to congratulate the couple. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she hugged her loved ones, overwhelmed by their support and joy. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to dream about a future filled with happiness, not heartbreak. News of Sarah and Jake's engagement spread quickly, reaching even those who had drifted out of touch. Among them was Michael, who heard about it through mutual acquaintances. At first, he dismissed the rumors as idle gossip, refusing to believe that Sarah had moved on so completely. But when pictures of their engagement party surfaced online, photos of Sarah smiling radiantly with Jake by her side, Michael couldn't deny the truth any longer. He sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the screen of his phone. Each image felt like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of everything he had lost. The woman he had abandoned at the altar, the woman he thought he could win back, was gone forever. In her place stood someone new, someone better, happy, healed, and unapologetically free. For weeks afterward, Michael spiraled further into despair. His career suffered as he struggled to focus, and his social life dwindled to almost nothing. Even his family grew tired of his excuses and self-pity, urging him to take responsibility for his actions instead of wallowing in regret. Yet despite their pleas, Michael remained trapped in a cycle of guilt and shame, unable to see a way forward. Meanwhile, Emily watched from afar, observing Michael's decline with a mix of pity and frustration. Though she had vowed to stay out of his life, she couldn't ignore the impact his choices had on those around him, including herself. One rainy evening, she decided to pay him an unexpected visit, hoping to offer some closure, or at least clarity. When Michael opened the door and saw Emily standing there, his expression shifted from surprise to disbelief. "What are you doing here?" he asked hoarsely, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I came because I'm tired of seeing you destroy yourself," Emily replied bluntly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "You made your bed, Michael. Now it's time to lie in it." Her words stung, but they also forced him to confront the reality of his situation. For the first time in months, Michael allowed himself to reflect honestly on his mistakes, not just with Sarah, but with everyone he had hurt along the way. He realized that redemption wasn't something he could demand. It was something he had to earn, and earning it meant starting over from scratch. In the months that followed, Michael began taking small steps toward rebuilding his life. He reconnected with old friends, apologized to those he had wronged, and threw himself into volunteer work, seeking purpose beyond his own pain. It wasn't easy, and progress was slow, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. As for Sarah and Jake, the journey together continued to flourish. On a sunny spring morning, surrounded by loved ones, they exchanged vows under a canopy of blooming flowers. This time, there were no interruptions, no betrayals, only love, laughter, and the promise of a lifetime spent side by side. Watching from a distance, Michael couldn't help but feel a pang of regret mixed with admiration. He knew he would never get a second chance with Sarah, but perhaps, someday, he might find forgiveness within himself. Until then, he vowed to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Life, after all, had a way of surprising even those who least deserved it. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or if this completes the story outline.